Do you ever fear forgetting? Not just yourself, but everything you've ever experienced in your life, disappearing in a matter of seconds. Could you even consider yourself the same person? Would those closest to you still care about the current you? Well, that's the thing. You don't know. They definitely show concern. You can see in their eyes. They'll spout stories about how funny you were, caring you were, intelligent, kind, all in an attempt to bring you back. But nothing seems to work. Unfortunately, mere stories cannot bring you back. All they do is remind you of how great you used to be and just how inadequate you are in comparison. Slowly over time, this pressure begins to build, rotting away at your conscience until you discover it. A book, not a regular one, but one that contains memories. Memories of those who passed on, their entire lives detailed for you to see and experience. With this, you come to a rather gruesome thought. What if you could slowly piece yourself back together using others' memories? What if by seeing others' detailed memories of you, your personality, strengths, weaknesses, insecurities, likes, dislikes, you could basically reboot yourself and become the person that was lost? But the books can only exist. The subject is dead. To do that would require you to kill everyone close to you in order to read their book. And if you complete that goal, what then? Everyone would be dead. Countless would suffer. There would be no way to undo it. Well, unfortunately, the man caught in this situation can undo it. This is Rezero Gluttony If, an alternate what-if story that details what would have happened if Subaru didn't regain his memories and came to the wrong conclusion, how to bring them back. You see, Subaru in this story has essentially lost any form of human emotion and empathy, except for constant self-loathing. He believes that by killing every single person who ever knew him, he could read the books of the dead and use their memories to patch himself back together. Once the original Nazi Subaru returns, they can use their ability or return by death to go back in time and undo all the pain and suffering they caused to the world. But that's neither here nor there. There is one important question that needs to be asked. Do you know my name? A child named Amu Sears is asked this strange question. She doesn't quite understand it. Despite it being so simple, the stranger asks her the question again, but Amu gets a foreboding feeling from it, as if she answers it, something bad will happen. She answers no, and the stranger leaves. Unknowingly to her, that was probably the smartest thing she did in her life, because she stands alone in a village full of corpses. Subaru had wiped out the village, killing everyone who inhabited it, except for one girl. Why did Subaru do this? Well, we need a little more context. Subaru was walking across the open country towards an unknown destination. Why he wasn't using a dragon carriage? Well, that's not really important. Before he could think much about the journey, Emilia would suggest they stop and maybe eat and rest. Subaru would agree, and alongside others would set up a campsite. Now they'd engage with their typical banter, with the main topic of conversation being about how delicious mayonnaise is. Ram would obviously disagree and call it disgusting, and this would turn into a heated debate. Of course, many others would join, and for a second, everything seemed right.
Subaru and Julius get along so well.
Of course, none of this conversation had actually taken place. Subaru was essentially rambling to himself. When he killed Emilia, Beatrice, Julius, and all the others in the watchtower, he had read their books of the dead, saw all their lives in extreme detail, using their memories to imprint themselves into his brain, as if he himself had lived their lives. This process essentially resulted in his mind creating a vestige of that person. They aren't them, but they are sort of representative of how they look and behave in life. Subaru often interacted with them and sought them out for advice, but most times they existed to give him comfort, allowing him to escape from the reality of what he'd done, even for just a moment. This was one of those times, and unfortunately, it ended prematurely because there was one person that was still real. Shala had been accompanying Subaru the entire time, and although he'd often ignore her in favor of his imaginary companions, she never showed any real frustration or anger over this. She was just happy to even be acknowledged. Shala was here for an important reason, one we'd come to understand soon. On his long walk towards the nearest patch of civilization, Subaru would happen to cross paths with a dragon carriage. The man had a striking resemblance to Otto and seemed to recognize Subaru right away. Subaru, however, had no clue who he was. However, this man's name was Reagan, and he was Otto's brother. Reagan hadn't had many interactions with Subaru, but even he found it strange while he was walking alone on the road without any of his companions with him. Subaru simply explained that he was on a journey of self-discovery. Reagan finds Subaru's behavior strange, especially since Subaru was strangely on edge around him and seemingly didn't remember him despite their previous meeting. Despite this, Reagan offers Subaru a ride to the nearest village. Subaru agrees, and the two go on their way. On the way to the village, Subaru asked Reagan if he had ever been there before. Reagan confirms that Subaru had visited at least one time alongside Otto, and these words were unfortunately everything Subaru needed to hear. Subaru remarks on how similar Reagan and Otto were, a compliment Reagan isn't fully able to register. In a flash of light, Reagan's head is blown clean off his body, and his corpse slumps over, lifeless. Shala, who hadn't been far behind, killed him with her ability, a technique which she perfected over 400 years. Reagan stood no chance. Not even the dragon pulling the carriage was spared, and despite Subaru's short apology before these deaths, he showed zero remorse or emotion to his blatant murder. He orders Shala to hide the bodies and carriage deep in the forest, and he makes his way on foot towards the village in order to ask a simple question. Do you know my name? Every murder had a purpose. Every life taken was another opportunity to recover a fragment of the person he lost. So Subaru sat once again within the library and opened another book of the dead. Every memory, every experience, every emotion of Reagan became his own for just a few moments. When he finally came back to reality, he could barely breathe, because with every book he finished, the person he called himself became just a little harder to recognize. A normal person would have completely lost their sense of identity. Their memories, personality, and emotions would have melted together with everyone else's until there was nothing left of the original person. But Subaru couldn't stop, because stopping meant abandoning Natsuki Subaru forever. The only person beside him was Shala. Concerned, she asked if he was alright, but he brushed the question aside almost immediately. Instead, he asked her the only thing that mattered.
Get me the next book.
Subaru looked down at the book he just finished. After experiencing his entire life, Subaru came to an unfortunate conclusion. Reagan barely knew Natsuki Subaru. From his perspective, Subaru was just someone who once traveled alongside his older brother Otto. That wasn't remotely enough information. Reagan's death had been almost meaningless. The imagined Reagan, born from the memories Subaru had absorbed, looked at him with quiet disappointment. Subaru apologized for killing him, and then apologized again for the fact that even after taking his life, he'd barely been any use. But even this imaginary version of Reagan accepted Subaru's reasoning. If everything was restored in the end, then his death would be undone as well. This would unfortunately be the fate of many more people to come. One by one, he'd written down the names of every person who knew Natsuki Subaru, every person whose memories might obtain another missing piece of himself. He crossed Reagan's name off the list. Everyone is dead. This is the news to the Echidna in Anastasia's body, delivered to Reinhardt, Otto, and Garfield. She tells them that Subaru had lost his memories, and in a desperate attempt to bring them back, he attacked and killed everyone. Subaru was a completely different person, one lacking any form of empathy. Of course, the others found this hard to believe. However, Foxidna at this point had given up, losing the last possible way to complete the tower's trials. There was no feasible way left to save Anastasia, but others like Ricardo were not giving up, despite the hopelessness of the situation. If there existed even a violent surge of water tore through the city. In moments, Pristella had vanished. Where home stood, there was only remnants of destruction. There was a reason Anastasia somehow survived the tower. Subaru let her escape in order for her to gather all her allies in one place. Subaru intentionally caused a flood in order to kill everyone in an instant. Killing all these people gave him no pleasure, but it was still necessary. Amid the destruction, Otto and Garfield had survived the initial wave of water. However, they didn't get much time to grieve or process what was happening. Shala appeared and began sniping them from afar. Garfield attempted to intercept Shala, but He didn't get much of an opportunity. Subaru had appeared in front of Garfield, and despite looking the same and sounding the same, Garfield knew in his heart that this wasn't the same person. He didn't get much time to ponder, as Shala would quickly tear a hole right through his torso. Otto finally came face to face with the man he once called his closest friend, or rather, the man wearing Subaru's face. Otto immediately noticed that something was horribly wrong. Subaru's hair, once jet black, had turned completely white. His eyes had become clouded over. Even the way he carried himself felt empty. It wasn't just that he changed. To Otto, this genuinely wasn't Natsuki Subaru anymore. Ironically, Subaru agreed. He openly admits that he barely understands himself. Ever since losing his memories, he's been desperately trying to reconstruct the person he used to be, and in his eyes, the only incompetent person standing before Otto was himself. Subaru doesn't hate everyone else. He hates himself. He genuinely believes that everyone around him is smarter, kinder, and more capable than he could ever hope to be. That's precisely why he trusts their judgment over his own. At first glance, Otto assumed Subaru's goal was obvious: kill everyone, maybe even catch Reinhard in the flood. Subaru compliments Otto for almost figuring out his entire plan. Almost. Because Otto made one critical mistake. He assumed Reinhard was the target, but Subaru outright says that he never expected something as convenient as Reinhard dying in the flood. Instead, Subaru calmly revealed the real reason he drowned the city: the flood, the deaths. It was all to make it absolutely certain that Otto couldn't escape. Otto possessed a divine protection that allowed him to communicate with animals. Through the main story, this ability, combined with his incredible intelligence, has repeatedly saved Subaru and others from impossible situations. So, how do you stop Otto? Well, you remove every advantage he has. Flood the city, kill every living creature that could possibly carry information, leave him isolated. Subaru didn't entirely come up with this himself. Instead, he asked the people he had already murdered. The vestiges living inside his mind all answered the same question: who is the most troublesome person in the Amelia camp? Every single one of them gave the exact answer. Just like Reagan, his life ended in an instant. Before Subaru could leave, he is confronted by Reinhard. Reinhard questions Subaru about his motives and just how he could betray everything he stood for. He even wonders if Shala has something to do with it. But Subaru is only staying true to himself, or at least true to whatever version of him this is. Reinhard, of course, wouldn't just let Subaru leave easily. That's why Subaru left Felt as a hostage. In an instant, Shala fires her attack towards Felt, forcing Reinhard to chase after it, giving Subaru time to escape. However, Reinhard will not give up his pursuit, and his journey will lead him to a familiar place. Due to being a remote village, it took a long time for anyone to learn about the atrocities, and although it wasn't known who attacked the village, Reinhard knew it could only be one man. But Reinhard could not fully focus on capturing Subaru at the moment, because the young girl on Musirs was all alone, seeking comfort and safety from a hero. This was part of Subaru's plan. The presence of the young girl will slow down Reinhard's pursuit. By this point, Subaru had convinced himself of one undeniable truth: Natsuki Subaru possessed the power to overturn fate itself. If he could become that person again, then every single person he murdered could be brought back. That belief had become the foundation of everything he did, as the countless vestiges born from the Book of the Dead surrounded him. Each one reaffirmed the same thing: the Subaru they remembered was dependable, someone who always appeared when he was needed, someone they trusted without hesitation. He accepted their faith as though it had been entrusted to him. If they believed Natsuki Subaru could save everyone, then he would become Natsuki Subaru, no matter what it took. But there was one person Subaru was neglecting to show appreciation. If there was anyone who deserved gratitude, it was her. Looking at her, Subaru realized something he spent so long avoiding. Everyone who knew Natsuki Subaru had to die. Only then could he read every Book of the Dead and reconstruct the person he'd lost. That means there was only one person left after Reinhard. Despite knowing Subaru intended to kill her eventually, she never once considered leaving. Subaru couldn't understand it, so he finally asked why she continued following him despite knowing exactly how her story would end. Her answer was painfully simple. Shala didn't care about Subaru's objective, the Books of the Dead, or even whether or not he was truly the same person. All she wanted was to love him, to help him however she could. to be useful until the very end, and when her life finally came to an end, she only wanted one thing in return, that Subaru would cry for her. For perhaps the first time since losing his memories, Subaru laughed, not as the hero everyone remembered, not as the version of Natsuki Subaru he tried to desperately imitate, but as himself, but as the hollow man who remembered nothing of his own life. Subaru couldn't return her feelings, but for the first time, he gave her something she truly wanted, a place. At the end of the journey,